if you want to talk about my flaws. So
Alphabetical or rank from most important to least?
all right. Well, anyway, sorry I'm distracted, folks. Welcome back to the Lovecraft Easing podcast. Mike Davis, we've got Mark Rainey, Matthew Carpenter, Alan Hughes, and we're supposed to have Matt Cardin. He just sent me an email and he said 7 p.m. Eastern, right? I was like, no, now. I told him what time, but those geniuses, they always have their head in the clouds. So, all right, welcome everybody. I think Matt will be here shortly. Let's do introductions anyway. Matt, do you have a prize?
I do. It's pretty nice. It's a brand new anthology of short stories.
Oh, he's going to be on today.
Okay, well, All the Stars Die. And
John Taff.
yeah, uh, it's really a nice book. This one includes a little postcard signature.
Oh, nice.
So if you want to win this prize, send an email to easyandprizes@gmail.com and put stars in the subject heading. We don't draw a winner for 6 to 8 weeks. You got plenty of time to get an entry in.
Yeah.
So just be sure to send in an entry, and who knows, maybe you'll win.
Yeah, and he's going to be here after we talk to Matt, him and Doug Murano with Bad Handbooks.
Oh, that's good.
So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting episode, especially if Matt comes. Mark, you want to introduce yourself?
I am Mark Rainey, sometimes known as Stephen Mark Rainey.
That's good. We're done.
Okay, yeah. I write stuff and bother Mike as much as possible. I'm working on it really hard today.
It works. We may have to interview you if Matt doesn't show up.
Oh, God.
Alan Hughes.
Hey, Alan Hughes, teacher, artist, and I don't try to irritate Mike. I try to make things easier for him.
He does. You could learn from him, Mr. Stephen Mark Rainey.
I'm going to have to start working on Alan too then.
I'm a teacher. Right. I have a high threshold for annoyance.
Well, yeah, you're a high school teacher. So, Matt has some things to talk about. Some filler while we wait for Matt Cardin. Right?
Okay, so I've got the streaming package for the film festival. I haven't finished it yet, but there's a new Lovecraft documentary on there. It's from a guy from France. So the main language of the documentary is in French. And it looks to me like it's going to be a good one. There's several floating around there. I really need to do like a summary of them for the easing page. But this one is called The World of Lovecraft. What's it called? It's World of Lovecraft. Yeah, it's a brand new documentary.
World of Lovecraft, not World of Warcraft.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's French. They interview multiple French authors, but they also have S.T. Joshi in there giving commentary, of course.
Okay.
So I don't know, like, my view is that I've watched 3 Lovecraft documentaries over the years, and the first was like made in 2002 or 3 or 4. It was from the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival. The people who went there did a Lovecraft biography, and it was really just the people who attended the festival regularly at that point were getting interviewed. So it's like a fanfic kind of production.
Yeah.
And the flaw there is they tried to do like a quote, like there was a ritual taking place at the film festival and it went awry. So they like had some like other stuff going on besides documentary. Which I think if you weren't there, it's like being sober in a room full of drunk people. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
Well, the second one was Fear of the Unknown. And that was like 2009 or 10, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was pretty good.
It's a good documentary. They interview Caitlin Kiernan, Neil Gaiman, Robert Price. S.T. Joshi, other people. The thing is, it is very much, I think, a labor of love for people who love the work, because they don't really shine the light on his gaping flaws, you know. Then recently there was a guy who I think was from India. He's a United States citizen, and when he was a kid, he felt like he was an outsider based on his race and culture.
Right.
And then that's when he stumbled across Lovecraft, and he thought Lovecraft very spoke of this, of being a stranger in the world around you, or like not really understanding anything, and how things can be very frightening. But the thing I really liked about this documentary is he realized about Lovecraft's racism. And so, more so than the other two documentaries I watched, this guy actually sort of takes the bull by the
This is
horn.
the World of Lovecraft one.
No, that's the one that I'm watching now.
Oh, which
That's
one's
the
this
French one. This is one that was showed there a couple years ago. I got to look up the name of it.
Oh, okay. All right.
These names have dribbled out of my head. I'll put them on the main Lovecraft Facebook page. I'll do a thing about documentaries tomorrow.
Okay.
But the thing is, his ultimate conclusion was Lovecraft was just a man who was frightened by things in the world around him, and he wrote stories that I like. And
That
I
about
thought that
sums
was
it up.
actually a fair assessment of the man.
That sums it up very succinctly.
So
Yeah.
I think right now, my if you want to watch a Lovecraft documentary, I think you have to watch both of these: The Fear of the Unknown and the more recent one.
Fear of the Unknown is on YouTube, I believe. Or
Yeah,
at least it used to be.
I'm a little I'm waiting to finish this other biography, and then I'll comment about it. But they've done some things like there's faux stuff occurring, like this guy's called to the library to discuss the Call of Cthulhu, and they show him with dusty old manuscripts and stuff. And I say, well, this is again getting me be more to a fan experience rather than say a true documentary about Lovecraft. But
Yeah.
I'll have some commentary on it. Hopefully, I'll finish it in the next 2 days.
Matt Cardin's on his way. He got the time wrong. He'll be here in a minute. While we're waiting on him, I want to mention, as I usually do, the mailing list. It's an email alert list. It gives you basically gives you a reminder on podcast days and tells you what's going on. It's a very low traffic list, and it's near the top in the show notes. Whether you're listening to this later on Spotify or you're watching on YouTube, it'll be there. The other thing that's there is the Patreon link. And if you like what we do here, the only reason we can do it is because of the Patreons, and you get a hell of a lot for $5 a month. I'll just put it that way. And yeah, so the new Discord is really exciting for Patreons only. So we've got a voice channel in there that's open 24/7, and we've actually had people on it, and it's been a lot of fun to hang out with people. So you don't have to adjust your makeup or anything before going in there, because it's no picture, just voice. So yeah.
Ran
Uh,
into
yeah.
people twice this week, talked movies, games.
Yeah.
So
And anyway, that Matt Cardin, oh shit, he's here.
Hello,
Hey, Matt.
gentlemen. Sorry for the mix-up.
That's all right.
What was I just coming in on?
I was just
He was saying really bad things.
Yeah, I was.
As well he should.
No, how are you
Knows it,
doing?
Matt?
I'm good, Mike.
That's
Matt
good.
Carpenter, Alan Hughes, Mark Rainey, whom I haven't seen face to face. Oh my God, I think it's actually been since 2008 in Indianapolis.
That is correct. At MoCon in Indianapolis.
It was fantastic to see you.
Yeah, and you too. And
Yeah.
in celebration, I listened to that the Demonics CD that I got from you all those years ago. I keep that in my car as my go-to when I need some creepy music.
Wow.
Demonic CD.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's tell them about it, Matt.
I've played piano my whole life and did electronic music composition for quite a while. And I have an album instrumental music in different forms, electronica and kind of soundtrack music and some metalish rock type stuff. And it came out from Mythos Books with Dark Awakenings, my second collection. At the time that we met for MoCon in '08, I sort of had some of the tracks, but not the full album, and I was passing them around. Anyway, it was called I called the project Daemonics, DAEMONYX, and so Mark
Is it available
had
online these days?
one of those discs. CD Baby had it for a while, and they may still, but actually, if you go on YouTube, I think the whole thing, all the tracks are on there. Has some cover art that Jason Van Hollander contributed, and I was obsessed with making that music for about 3 years. So that was many years ago.
What should people search for on YouTube to find that?
Search for my name and maybe DAEMONYX, Daemonics, or that was kind of the project title. The album title was Curse of the Daimon, DAIMON. So I didn't realize until I made a lot of the music there was a through line of domination by, another force.
Mark, were you going to say something?
Just that I don't remember offhand how many tracks there are on it, but there's sort of an arc. It starts out, with certain motifs, and every now and then you hear them through the course of the music, and then at the end, comes back, sort of resurges there. And honest to God, I think it is my favorite composition of creepy music ever. Like I said, I've had the CD of it since 2008, and I still listen to it fairly regularly.
Wow, appreciate that. Thank you, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if anybody finds that link, be sure and post it in the side chat. So
I think the track that's kind of the heart of the whole thing is the second one. It's called Daimonica. Yeah. It's basically overwhelmed with maybe too many embedded movie clips.
I really like those. I mean, especially as things build up and you hear, is there someone inside you, and then you hear the monologue was from Network of all places, wasn't it? That fit in so beautifully.
Well, thank you. That repeated, is there someone inside you? That is, of course, the psychiatrist in The Exorcist talking to Regan.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say it would be and I haven't heard it. Maybe it would be a good one to listen to while you're reading "The Secret of Ventriloquism" by John Paget.
Good. So. Oh, you know what? I hadn't thought about that. So yeah, that is definitely the same thematic territory, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very good. John's book is worth reading at any time, under any circumstances, anywhere, anyway. So good call.
Yeah. Well, hey, good to see you. For those out there who don't know who you are, would you introduce yourself? Tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Hey, I'm Matt Cardin.
All right.
Oh, tell you something about
myself. I hope you've enjoyed being here today.
Thank you. Let's see. Probably among the crowd who tunes into the podcast here, I am probably best known for writing cosmic horror fiction, supernatural horror fiction, and my name is connected with the Legati crowd. The Legati circle, like John Paget. There's John and me and some others that became known as sort of clustered around and coming out from Tom's huge, massive shadow over everything. And my first book,
Cisco maybe too.
Yeah. Oh, Mike Cisco, 100%. Michael is way in there. There's several others that we could name, right?
Yeah.
And my first book was Divinations of the Deep, came out in 2002. Dark Awakenings came out in 2010. That's omnibus collection of basically all except for a couple of stories of my published fiction, To Rouse Leviathan, that came out in 2019.
Would that be a good start for someone who hasn't read your fiction? I think it would be, because
I would think so. I mean, my first published story was titled Teeth. It came out in Children of Cthulhu, that anthology, and what was that, 2001 or 2? And it's in there as the start of part 2. And I would suggest that. I've written a lot of nonfiction as well, a lot of essays. So that's in a separate collection, a 20-year collection of my essays called What the Demons Said. And then I'm also, I've been working in higher ed for years, and I have edited 3 academic encyclopedias on topics of interest, including the 2-volume encyclopedia, Horror Literature Through History, that came out from ABC Clio, which has been renamed since then, but they supply college libraries everywhere. So that's kind of
And
my
mummies.
background.
Mummies.
Mummies, and then
Mummies.
another one on the paranormal. I was lucky with those encyclopedias. I managed to assemble a kind of world-class teams of scholars and authors and people working in the fields of, the whole mummy field, scientists and writers, and then the same with the paranormal and the horror thing. I don't know how I lucked out that well, but I had, for one of those, I think I had 40 different people that wrote for me, and one of those was about 45, and then the mummy book was like 70. So I felt like
Yeah.
I fell into the best luck in the world to manage to get those things produced.
Well, maybe, but
Sorry, can I ask, what are you doing these days? You're working at a university, I guess?
Yeah, it's a college in North Arkansas. It's a community college, and I'm the vice president for academic affairs. So I'm the chief academic officer of the college, and we are deep into moving to merge with the University of Arkansas system. So we'll be a 2-year college in the UA system.
What city is it in?
Harrison?
Okay, I've driven down to Hot Springs before.
That's where National Park College, one of the sister colleges, is located. I'm friends, acquaintances with my counterpart over there, and so yeah, like any state, there's a system of 2 years.
It's a beautiful wild country around there, I guess.
Yeah, it
Mountains
is.
and
It is.
forests
If
and
you know
lakes.
Branson, Missouri, Harrison is south of it.
Yeah, sure.
well, if for those out there who haven't read Matt's work, Michael Sisko, or excuse me, mentioned Michael Sisko, To Rouse Leviathan is a great place to start by Matt
Fine.
Cardin. So just bear that in mind. Matt's got a book that comes out a week from tomorrow, I believe, the 15th. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, it's called Writing at the Wellspring, Tapping the Source of Your Inner Genius. And man, there's a lot to this book. Alan and I we were talking about it as before you came on, and I said, it's just a little bit of light reading. And he's like, yeah. So, but could you tell us what the book is about, basically?
Sure. I'll probably shouldn't give a preface. I'll just say this. It's sort of, I guess it really is a follow-up book to a previous book that I published in 2011 titled A Course in Demonic Creativity. And that one was subtitled A Writer's Guide to the Inner Genius. And then, this one, Writing at the Wellspring, is subtitled Tapping the Source of Your Inner Genius. I wrote the first book. That was my first book on creativity, A Course in Demonic Creativity, originally as posts for a blog that I briefly ran for about 3 years titled Demon Muse. And I thought I would publish the book traditionally, and then I just felt totally compelled and motivated as soon as it was done to just kind of set it free into the wild. So I made a PDF out of it and put it on the internet, and it's been there ever since. And a lot of people have read it. I mean, from what I could tell, I lost track of downloads, and the Demon Muse site was overcome with bots, and it's just been gone for years. I shut it down. I think several tens of thousands of people have read that one. It seems to have kind of underground circulated or something.
Yeah.
But this one follows up on the same theme and then extends it. The theme is that of understanding and experiencing creativity, which my focus is on writing, but it would go for anything, really in the mode and the model of the ancient ideas of the muse and the daimon, or the demon, or the genius in the Roman mold, of a spirit that would live in the artist's studio or something like that, live in the poet's pen. So it really is about not just thinking about that, but getting into the felt experience, which, in my opinion, is there for all of us, even those who vigorously deny and refuse that there is any such thing. And my point about going into what the demon muse model is, that this is either a metaphor or the real thing, and living in the mystery in the middle, where you realize that because the way we're situated subjectively, we can't tell, is the vein of gold right there. And the further innovation, I guess, or the direction for this new book, Writing at the Wellspring, beyond the former one, which was all about that, is that this book deals with that, but then it also extends it massively into the realm of non-duality, the non-dual spiritual understanding or awakening to things. So looking at the way just writing just happens, like everything just happens.
Yeah. Well, first of all, for those watching live or this week, you can pre-order the Kindle edition now, and the print edition will be available a week from today, or a week and a day from today. So,
Yeah, this is my first
whatever
time
your preference
self-publishing.
is.
I didn't know that until I got into it. Like, oh, when you're going through Amazon KDP,
Yeah,
Kindle edition can be pre-ordered. Print edition drops for everyone on the day of publication.
yeah. I don't know why, but yeah, there's no reason for it. It's just their policy.
Yep.
So, I did a lot of highlighting in this. You can't really see my Kindle, the PDF that you sent me. So thanks for that.
Yeah.
In the preface, you're right. So I thought I would take a moment in this preface to specify who the book is for, based on who I believe will feel it most at home in it. And you've got bullet points. This book will most likely appeal to you if you find yourself reflected in any or all of the following. One of the things that I highlighted, one of the bullet points that I highlighted was, you've glimpsed the uncanny truth that inspiration may not be yours, but something that comes through you. And there's this, always, as you know better than I, this debate among writers or creatives of any sort on this. And maybe you could start by talking about that a little bit. There's the discipline, sit down and do it that way, or what you're referring to. So thought I would
Sure.
start there, if that's all right.
Well, yeah, if anybody wants to feel like, or it really is their strong impression that they're doing it, and that all notion of inspiration, or writing or any kind of creativity being something that is somewhat beyond the conscious ego's boundaries is just bunk. If that's the way it is for them, great,
Right.
go with it. I would say that that the actual case is not any different from the fact that obtains for all of us 100% right now, as we each sit looking at our individual screens, and all the people who are watching this right now are looking from where they're looking for. You didn't ask to be born. Your entire existence consists of, at some point, something started happening in consciousness, and it has never changed. In fact, the idea that there was movement in time from that is just part of this show that has been happening that you had no control over, and you don't have any control over it now. And the idea that you have some kind of autonomous control over some sort of separate thing within this show that is you is just, it's just an idea within the show. I don't know if that makes sense as I say it, but I think it's defensible, and I think it's the only thing ultimately that can be approximated as truth in speaking it. And so the idea that writing and creativity within this multi-layered, movie that we're all living would follow the same mold, and in fact would be somewhere where it comes most pointedly to the fore. That seems just naturally to me to fold into it. Why am I interested in the things I'm interested in? I could
Right.
have a sense of consciously studying things that I feel like I'm not interested in and try to make myself interested in them, and maybe it would work. And I could say, well, look at that. I chose to be interested in that. What motivation was leading me to even do that? I can never get behind myself. There's always something about my perceptions, my interests, my predilections, as I say, my very existence that comes before the conscious, voluntary self. And when you're writing, when everybody knows that thing where you tap and you're flowing and so on. Hey, what the heck's going on? It's we say it takes on a life of its own. That we're all talking about the boundary between ego, sense, what am I, what's not I, what's voluntary, what's involuntary. It all hinges on that point, and the bulk of it, I think, goes of where the good stuff happens, comes when we have this sense, again, whether it's a metaphor, whether it's real, that there's something on the other side of things, that is coming to us, and as I say, dwelling there and understanding that that's what it's like for me, and that there's a way to articulate it has really been strong for me.
Well,
Can I ask, I'm sorry, can I ask,
Yeah.
have you ever read anything by Scott Baker, R. Scott Baker? He writes fantasy, but he had this series. I read like several books in it. The first one's called The Darkness That Comes Before. and this one person is an adept from this monastery, for lack of a better word, cult, whatever they study the pre-thought. Okay, so the darkness that becomes before you articulate a thought in your mind, and what makes you articulate that thought from that darkness. And they have this thing where they like have every single muscle on the face has been analyzed so that every single facial expression can be appropriately interpreted to like, why is someone coming up with that thought? I'm not saying they answer this question in this series. After all, it's a fantasy series. It's not like real a philosophical treatise, but it just sort of strikes me that's sort of similar to what you're saying. And I just
It sounds it.
I just didn't know, like you probably get it out of your college library, the darkness that comes before. Just I would have been interested to know what you had thought of that, because it's almost like it's even that's not the thrust of the book, but that's the same question.
I'm familiar with Baker, and I can't say the title. Years ago, I read one of his books and found it fascinating, and I know that he has had that real philosophical side to his career. I haven't read that book, and I haven't read those books, but that sounds interesting enough to make me look it up. And so, yeah, I mean, that whole thing about the darkness before thought, and being able to and having focused this monastic sect, having focused on delving into that sounds very Buddhist in a way, because Buddhism and Hinduism get really deep into the ontology and psychology of that very thing.
But they don't, it's not like they use this for good. They use it to manipulate people.
Yeah, well, I suppose it could be. I suppose
Right.
it could be. That's fascinating. That's worth looking at. And yeah, it sounds similar. Yeah, the idea that there is that realm. We all know. I mean, even conventional psychology will talk about the pre-verbal realm and the pre-thought realm, and what goes on with all that. It doesn't matter if you're a materialist or some kind of a vitalist, or whatever. There's this stuff that comes before thought, and before our sense of voluntary control. And when it comes to creativity, I mean, the idea of the muse is as we all know, the 9 muses of ancient Greek mythology, or just the more generic idea of the muse, is that there is a spirit, a god, a goddess, usually, who is whispering invisibly, spiritually, ideas into the minds, into the ears of those who write or paint. And we have I never can remember them all, but we had the 9 muses in ancient Greece, each one devoted to something different. There's the muse of epic poetry, and there's the muse of history and all that kind of thing. There's the more generic idea of, not more generic, related idea of the daimon, daimon, which was Latinized as the demon, daemon, which that term has still been used, the demon, for the spirit that inspires writers. Kipling used it. I have seen, I'm trying to think who else I've seen use it. Oh, having a stupid retrieval issue here. Help me. The terror, Dan, can't say his name. He's
Simmons.
Dan Simmons has talked about it. It's that whole idea has different names. It has a tradition, and it's fascinating.
Well, Bradbury, as you know, you and I, we're both huge fans of Ray Bradbury.
Yeah.
A little bit into the book, you say one of my favorite examples of such a person is Ray Bradbury, talking about what you're talking about. He wrote at age 82, "My eyes fill with tears as I review the table," about his the collection Bradbury Stories, "as I review the table of contents of this volume. All my dear, dear friends, the monsters and angels of my imagination." And he says, I can't find the link. I can't find where I highlighted where he says that
Are you going
it
to
all
talk
kind
about
of
where
flows through him,
and he talks about how he would sometimes get up at night, right, and go down and look at the wall of the bookcase with all his stuff up there, and he said he would just think, "My God, where did all this come from?" And just feel like he was so the luckiest person in the world. Like this wasn't him. A whole lot of us have that sense. I mean, I know you guys are all creative. A whole lot of us have that sense coming on. And he, in his book, the essays that were collected in what was titled Zen and the Art of Writing, he talks about the muse. He has an essay titled How to Keep and Feed a Muse. And he talks about it both in purely psychological terms, as like the unconscious in a psychoanalytic sense, but also in a sense that doesn't really go there, but it could go somewhere beyond. But he frames the muse as the unconscious portion of the mind where everything is stored up, nothing is ever forgotten. And as you well know, he has plenty of great stories about the origins of some of the tales that we love the most. And like, he hated Ireland the whole time he was over there working with John Huston to write the screenplay for Moby Dick. It just traumatized him for the rest of his life. And as he said, he never thought he would write about that ever. And years later, all these stories set in Ireland just pour out of him, and they're beautifully realized. And he's like, I didn't study all that. I was storing all that stuff up, and my muse just delivered it to me. There was a gestation period. He even wrote, as you know, the one story that is the sort of a fictionalization of his relationship with Huston, the Banshee.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that? It was made into one of the best episodes of Ray Bradbury Theater, where Peter O'Toole played the John Huston character in it, and kind of has a rather monstrous, cruel film director working with a young screenwriter up and coming whose name is Douglas, and of course Ray was Ray Douglas Bradbury, on a screenplay titled The Beast, just like the white whale, and it turned supernatural, where an Irish banshee actually gives the cruel director his comeuppance. Well, that's one of those things. All those years later, it just became fertile territory. It was gestating. You could say Bradbury's unconscious muse was waiting for whenever things had aligned rightly within him to be able to make a story out of it. That happens all the time. And again, it feels involuntary. And there's something important about diving into that. That's part of being a writer.
And I was going to say, you don't have to be a spiritualist. There's two ways to look at this, and you get into that in the book. But it's there whether you're a materialist or if you do have spiritual beliefs. I thought when I started reading the book about it flowing through you, there's in the Kindle edition to Red Dragon, Thomas Harris, he writes about writing the book. And I just wanted to read a couple things because it made me think of it right away. You must understand that when you are writing a novel, you are not making anything up. It's all there, and you just have to find it. And then he talks about he was basically in the room with Chilton and Graham and the staff, and the only fourth wall I've seen in nonfiction in a preface to a book was, he goes, I was enjoying my usual immunity while working, my invisibility to Chilton and Graham and the staff, but I was not comfortable in the presence of Dr. Lecter, not sure at all that the doctor could not see me. So that just blew me away when I read it.
That's great. I haven't actually read that one, believe it or not. It sounds like I need to.
Yeah, well, the preface itself is just fascinating, of course. So, but yeah, flowing through you. I just wanted to make the point for anyone listening that you don't have to adopt spiritual beliefs to be creative.
No. Yeah. Well, and I know most of us, or all of us here, are familiar with Robert Anton Wilson. And he is probably the most prominent person, although there are others who have spread the idea of chapel perilous as a transformative and harrowing spiritual state sometimes that comes upon people. You remember his talk about chapel perilous, the term drawn from Arthurian legend, being the state where a person feels that they are somehow being communicated to, or are in contact with, or are dominated by some other presence, some intelligence. It could be, the muse is a great example, or the daimon. In Wilson's telling, in his Cosmic Trigger, his classic nonfiction book, The Final Secret of the Illuminati is the subtitle, about that point in his own life where he came under the vivid sense that he was being spoken to or communicated with by some intelligence from the dog star Sirius. But he was self-aware about it. That's the chapel perilous thing. That's exactly what it's about. You're riding that edge. He's like, for all the world, I feel like I'm receiving psychic transmissions from a star. And I'm completely aware, he went on to get a PhD in psychology, completely aware that this may just be fantasy. This may be just imagination. This may be incipient or actual mental illness, but it feels
unaware,
real.
unlike Philip K. Dick.
Yes. Yeah. But Philip K. I mean, he dove all the way into that. However, he was living in chapel perilous for a long time, I think, because I mean, I haven't read all, for example, of Valis, or actually I haven't read as much of him as I should have, but I think he was, even though he was like just talking it like, this is all completely real, I want to think that he was also self-aware of just how wild that was,
Well,
especially in the early years.
you're not wrong. I've got his exegesis, which is, man, this
Yeah.
thing, it's incredible. And he did go back and forth, in his writings at night. He was wondering about that stuff, but
Yep. Chapel
it's
Perilous.
beside the point. But I guess it's fascinating though. So,
Yep.
but
I think Wilson said you come out on the other side of Chapel Perilous, and I'm going to forget. He said either stone cold paranoid or a complete agnostic. You're either like an absolute fundamentalist true believer, in whatever it is, or you are unable to commit to belief in anything literally completely ever, which is, by the way, where I am.
yeah, and I just want to make it clear to everyone that this is what Matt is talking about in this book. Yeah, if you're a materialist, if you're a spiritualist, it doesn't matter. You probably need to read this if you're a creative person. I mean, you definitely need to. And not just when it comes to creativity, but you talk in the book about how this applies to your life, which is probably an oversimplification. But talk a little bit about on my part, talk a little bit about the 5-year plan that you write about in the beginning of the book.
Yeah, I start the book off by actually sharing a long passage from something I wrote in one of my own employee annual performance reviews at the college. HR has us do that. And although we just recently, as in like in the past couple of months, had a revision to that process. So I don't think that question that I was answering in that passage I share in the book is there anymore. There was something in there that asked the employee under evaluation to talk about your 5-year plan. Where do you see yourself in 5 years career wise, and how do you plan to get there? And can college do anything to help you? It's a nice thing. And we have actually a biannual convocation at the college. Most do, every long semester that starts, we have the whole college get together for welcome and professional development and all this stuff. And that's led out of my office as the chief academic officer. And 2 or 3 years ago, I chose the whole "what's your why" notion. Simon Sinek. That's a shot through the culture now. Simon Sinek's idea of focusing on the why, the actual reason behind why your company, institution, yourself is doing what you do. He's written books on it. There's videos on it. It's huge. I took that and talked at one point to all of my assembled colleagues about it because it's important, focusing on the actual deep reason behind why we're all together.
Right.
And as I say at the start of the book, I found myself in real time going, wait a minute. I was starting to talk to them about that why question, sort of leading one really to the present and making it difficult sometimes to project what's going to happen into the future. And then I realized that's exactly what I just said on the last performance review I had done. So I shared that passage, and in a nutshell, what I said was, I have no 5-year plan. I cannot do it. All of the best things that have happened in my life always have been the result of pure, unforecastable serendipity. So
Yeah,
that's
you're
how I
right.
live.
This is a question that always makes me sound like I'm a distinctly unmotivated person when I try to answer it. So,
Yeah, because what are you going to be doing in 5 years? Maybe you're supposed to be able to say, but I think I finished the end of that paragraph by saying, in 5 years, I'll find out what I'm supposed to be doing in 5 years.
yeah.
Thank you.
So
I'm a high school teacher, and with our homeroom groups, we're supposed to go through that same exercise with them, like, make plans. And I've always been uncomfortable with that, and you verbalized it in a very way much better than I can. Who knows what they're going to be doing in 5 years?
Yeah, I completely agree. And that looking back over the years, if I could go back in any 5-year increment and try to predict where the next 5 year, what I would be doing in the next 5 years, and I would have been wrong about 99% of the time.
mhm.
But I wouldn't change anything either. There'll only be a few things I would change. But I like you said, the serendipity part of it. I think you have that serendipity, and then you make of it what you can, what you will.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And there's nothing wrong with trying to think about 5 years ahead. Who knows? I may be too hard on the other side, but if you think you're actually thinking about 5 years ahead, you are deluding yourself. You are thinking about now, in the now, and you're coming up with permutations of things. These whatever scenarios are happening right now. There is no actual future. There is only now. Just like there's no past, you can't reach out and touch it, right? It's memory traces right now. There's only now. It's fine to model those things, but if you really think you're going to plot your way to something that you're going to go towards, I think you've got everything upside down and backwards, right? Because actually you're not moving through time. You're just right here. That's why it feels so numinously weird to think about looking in the mirror or looking at the circumstances around you and going, how do I look like this? How the hell did this happen? You're not moving. Time is moving. The body is changing. All that kind of, it's moving through you. You're in place. You're observing this. So what we call the future is just whatever configuration all this is going to look like 5 seconds from now or 5 years from now. Fine to think about it, but the thinking is happening right now. And also, when you're trying to plan your way to the future, that's like trying to plan your way to walk to the grocery store. Sure, you can think about going through the route and all that. It's not real. It's hyper real. I mean, in your thinking, did that car stop at the corner and honk? That happened, and it's going to happen in real time. Were those leaves on that tree in that configuration, and did they flutter that way? And did that one fall down as you were on the way there? That actually happened when you go. The whole thing is infinitude of detail that is just all. That's what's real, and all of our abstractions in trying to think about it, even now, not even thinking ahead, are just these reductions of this infinitude that is here right now, and it's all there ever has been.
I really appreciated that example because when you talked about the car and the leaves just now, it's like it clicked into place for me, what you're trying to say there. Now you talk a lot about writing in the book, but you also say this applies to any creative, all creatives, all stripes. You can just substitute writing for whatever your creative is. I wrote myself a note on page 57. I highlighted that this seems to sum up a lot of the book for me.
Okay.
And you wrote, your job as a writer is not to be, quote, be creative, but to shepherd your unique creative spirit into the world through a rich discipline of inner collaboration. And there's so much in that sentence. And I wonder if you'd take a moment or take a while for those of us in Western culture who are used to, sit down, do it, plan it out. How do we flip over to this side and start listening to the muse? I had Joe Lansdale, I interviewed him a couple of weeks ago, and he was the first to say this is what works for me. But what he said was the way that I did it is I sit down for 3 hours a day, and I've done this, he said, all my life. And a lot of it's crap, but increasingly it's not. But that's what he does, 3 hours a day, no matter what, no matter how he's feeling, whether he feels inspired or not. And what you're talking about seems to be the opposite of that. And I wonder, it doesn't make him wrong or you right, and vice versa. But how do we get into that mode?
It isn't actually the opposite of what Joe was saying, by the way. It encompasses both sides. And I know that Joe is kind of one of the contemporary famous exponents of the ass in chair approach.
Right.
I know he really, and Brian Keene, he has talked very well about that. Hey, Mark, speaking of Brian, right? We were all there in 2008 in Indianapolis. Brian was there. No, he didn't get to come that year.
Not at that one. No.
No. We had Nick Mamatas and some others.
Yeah.
And a lot of good people there. But Brian and Joe, there's an honorable tradition of that. And in fact, Flannery O'Connor, the 3 hours, like Joe has, Flannery O'Connor preached 3 hours, recommended it to a friend. And I include that example in the book. In the book, I have a chapter titled "To Thine Own Muse Be True," which is an alteration of Shakespeare's "To Thine Own Self Be True," from Polonius' speech to his son. And the idea is that whatever works for you. You know, if for some people, being a disciplined, on schedule writer like Flannery O'Connor, saying that all her good stuff had come from devoting 3 hours every morning. And she told a friend of hers who was telling her about how she was feeling all bogged down. She was telling her, "You're messing up. You know, she said she'd been reading a lot, and she's like, "You're reading when you should be writing. You need to just do nothing but write for 3 hours a day," which she always did. And that's great for her. And there are other people that's great for as well. Oh, let's pause. Let's say hi to John.
I gotta switch my video. It's coming from the wrong camera.
Hey, John.
Oh, you're fine.
There we go.
Nope, there you go. John Taff, everybody.
Hello.
Good to see
John.
you.
I'm a little early, but
Nope, that's fine. We're just talking to Matt. You know, in the book, you talk about how you write, how you don't write for weeks, and then there'll be a flurry of activity.
Yeah, I think the only way to figure out what kind of writer you are, I mean, there's such a thing as being a regular disciplined writer, and that's the kind of writer some people need to be, either for part or all of their career. And there's such a thing as being an occasional and intermittent writer, and you can find endless examples, some of whom I detail in the book, of people who just write when they feel moved to do it. So what we're talking about is not a one-size-fits-all, one-shaped prescription. The only part that is the same is that the inspiration part or the muse part, whether a person feels it, acknowledges it or not, I think is in action. It's just that it's true. And by the way, if any of you, have you read The War of Art? Are you familiar with this book?
No, I'm not.
Why am I having such a hard? I'm tired today. I've been up since 2 a.m. So
your memory's way better than mine, Matt.
I was going to say Legend of Bagger Vance. Stephen Pressfield, the author Stephen Pressfield. He wrote The War of Art, which is now a classic modern book on writing and creativity that I cannot recommend highly enough. And he talks about, he has the model called going pro. He says that's what you have to do to actually get anywhere. And it's all about this, taking yourself seriously, committing to a disciplined practice, all this kind of thing. But part 2 of that book is called The Higher Realm, and it is literally directly all about the muses and daimons. You can see in his book there, these things are not necessarily separate. The point about discipline, or the point about indiscipline, which is its own kind of discipline if you're an intermittent writer, is paying attention to how and where your creativity wants to flow. You know, like some people, the magic key is sit down, and some days it's completely dry, and yet some of you, maybe the regular writers, you need to have the regular time. You know what it's like. Some days just nothing is happening. You're there, you're putting in your time, and yes, it's true, some things can come out that later you read and you're like, oh, that's better than I thought. You couldn't tell at the moment. Right. It's also true that you can write things that sound good, and you look at them later and you're like, oh hell, what was I thinking? But there's also the thing where you're going along and then whoa, bang, it lights up. And it's as if you made space for the creative juice to start flowing, for the muse to alight by the fact of being there and being available. And that's one of the most useful models for it, that hard work is not antithetical. Hard work is what creates a container for the muse to show up. So we're not talking about having to wait around for lightning to strike, which for some people is a recipe for never to do anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There are those you can read up on. I quote many in some of the book, that are, on the other hand, like, if I try to make myself write all the time, I die inside. It's not that I need to get through it, not that I need to just push through. It's wrong for me. That's who I am. At times I have written regularly and have gotten some good stuff out of it. But for the most part, I actually have to wait until something is pushing hard enough that it motivates me to go right. That is not more correct or less correct, but it's the same principle. It's how are you getting to the same point where the thing is speaking. There's a great line from Elizabeth Gilbert, the Eat, Pray, Love lady. Oh, yeah. Also gave a classic TED Talk on all of this, by the way. It was not in her TED Talk that she says this, but you should look up her TED Talk on creativity. She said in an interview, I think it was on NPR, that a lot of people those who are really proponents of only hard work, love to refer to Thomas Edison, and genius is 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration. She's like, yeah, it sounds like a slam to inspiration, but that's wrong. Even if it's not what Edison meant by what she said. She said the thing is that 99% is the clam and the 1% is the pearl. You got to keep your perspective right on what's the valuable part. So that's the way I look at it too.
Matt, do you ever, you're talking about the inspiration part of it, but let's say you've got a project and the inspiration, the flow is not happening. Do you ever, does it work for you to recharge by changing your focus, writing nonfiction, like I write a blog or I write reviews or do something, and eventually it pulls me, I get pulled back into where I wanted to be. Is that at all in your purview?
It does. By the way, I'd like to go back first and correct myself for saying clam. I should have said oyster. So there you go. And the other thing is that yeah, I know exactly what you mean. The same thing for me. Music we talked about earlier. For me, one thing is I can stop writing and go play the piano for a while for myself, and that actually sort of puts things in a different frame. I could think sort of neurologically about it and say it and trains my brain waves in a different way by getting this going and hearing the music and so on. But yeah, switching from I don't write fiction much anymore, but switching from fiction to nonfiction and back, that was helpful to me there for a while. That seemed to go in different parts.
How have you in your life learned to tune in to this muse, Matt? What was your journey there?
You and I have talked before. We have similar, heavily Christian religion soaked pasts, Right. So as you well know, the Christian tradition is full of that kind of thing. I think I was programmed, fortunately, in some ways, by stories of angelic visitations and communications and spiritual inspirations and so on from my upbringing. I have no idea why I was also interested in speculative fiction my whole life, but those interacted religion, spirituality, and fantasy, science fiction, and horror in interesting ways with increasing intensity in my late adolescence and my 20s and so on. And so at some point, and I was always kind of possessed by an idea to do things, play the piano, write. I said one of the first things I said I wanted to do was be a writer, and had a lot of stories I was writing as a kid and attempted novels. And actually, by age 15, had written, after having taped Hawk the Slayer off late night television on VHS, an entire novelization of Hawk the Slayer, in case anybody wants to know. So that was all there. But at some point, I don't know why I have a philosophical cast of mind. Some people are into this, some people are into that. I like to dig underneath the hood of my experience and of existence.
Yeah.
And I started first sort of unconsciously and then much more consciously noticing the subtext, sometimes becoming foretext in both religion, spirituality, and creativity writing, and also in supernatural fiction, of this dominance by or communication from or influence of or just the existence of some kind of intelligence force on the other side of the veil. I finally fell into weird and cosmic horror fiction being my favorite thing. Was a huge Lovecraft person. Ligotti changed my life. The whole classic Anglo-Saxon literary tradition in that area got me, and Algernon Blackwood and other things. And man, look at how many of those things are about. Like look at the Willows, or look at the Wendigo or something like that, especially the Willows.
Right.
It's like there's this force that is causing things to be like they are. The characters have stumbled onto this island in the middle of the Danube at flood stage, and it's like this stuff is happening that is the focal point of all this terrifying spiritual power. As you know, Blackwood himself was really into theosophy and various spiritual things. I found writers who were crossing the same lines. They were looking at these things, and it all kind of coalesced for me into this sense of, my gosh, a master theme behind the things that have moved me is this presence and influence in mundane affairs and in my individual and people's conscious lives of spiritual forces, whether real or not, whether benign or terrifying or horrifying. And so in my own writing, I started sort of involuntarily paying attention. This is over the course of many years of private journaling. I journaled obsessively for 30 years. I sort of started noticing that I was drawn to be looking at that. Like, what's going on here? What's going on within me? Where is the boundary line between conscious and unconscious and voluntary and involuntary? And where's all this coming from? Where's even my motivation to be thinking about and talking to myself in private about these things, let alone trying to write stories, and let alone being interested in spiritual awakening coming from? You see the through line there. And eventually it's like, well, these things have names. I'm not the first one to have noticed this. And so sort of a study of the tradition of this, and also tuning into how it has been for me in my desire to write and create, how that has actually showed up. And my own experience has been that I cannot not, whether metaphor or literal reality, or if that division even obtains, I cannot not think in terms of my creative efforts being a collaboration of sorts, or maybe actually between me and whatever is more me than I think I am.
Was it an effort to tune into that? Or was it something you learned gradually?
It was an involuntary effort. And part of the tuning in for me was actually writing that Demon Muse website, that blog that I told you about from 2009 to 11, with a lot of things coming before that. And you can see it in the horror stories I was writing before that as well. And part of the tuning in has been for me to try to articulate this. Most of this stuff, like the new book coming out, it really is me trying to articulate all of this to my own satisfaction. That's really what this amounts to. If anybody else finds it interesting, that's just a bonus.
Embrace solitude as a writer, even loneliness, quoting from the book, of course. Hear your daemon muse above the noise of the crowd. And then a little bit further, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about this. Outwardly, you're confronted by the world of people and objects, your environment. Inwardly, you're confronted from behind by your demon muse or unconscious mind, like a separate intelligence behind your very self, and in the middle, you. Maybe elaborate on that a little bit.
Sure. That's got a key passage in the whole thing.
Right.
I was talking about our ego consciousness, our ego selves. That's who's interacting, looking at the screen right now, right? That's who's listening consciously, and that's whatever memories are coming up and associations are coming, whatever mood you have, and just your whole sense of your body self and who and what you are, your self-image. That's us here now interacting, and you see a world in front of you that you didn't ask for, right? Not
Right.
consciously. It's just given, everything about it. But the point is that behind or above or before, however you want to put it, this conscious self that you and I are here interfacing through this electronic medium, there is all that stuff, like we were talking about, that is like you were talking about, that's in Scott Baker's book, right? There's the pre-thought type stuff. There's this realm that I'm calling the daimonic realm, the realm of the muse, the unconscious mind, whatever are the roots of this thing that's coming to you as consciousness. And when you think about it, we really are situated as these. The ego self really is in the middle, right? You've got the world that feels like not you, and then you've got whatever it is that makes you that you don't have any conscious control of, because it always eludes you. If you turn around to try to see it physically or mentally, it's always behind you. So what do you make of that? If you're sort of in the middle, who you think you are, who you feel yourself to be as a conscious self, what role do you play? And most of us in Western culture, especially, try to play the game of managing this thing that we call my life. And it always fails. There are periods that we want to say that it's all lined up and going great, and everything changes and it all ends. And eventually it really all ends. You're going to die, so am I. And this is all going to dissolve. And so what are we doing here? What's the point right here in this now moment I was talking about? It's like being the conduit, being the channel. What wants to happen externally, what wants to happen internally, what's coming through you as your creativity, what wants to manifest on the page in the world, not just there. It extends to what about the rest of your life and career? What about your personal relationships? What about what you consider to be the big issues of the world? What are you feeling led to do, and what can you, in whatever little sense of right or wrong correct or mistaken autonomy and agency you feel that you have. What are you supposed to do? What can you do? This can be applied to how am I going to get words on the page, and what kind of stuff am I supposed to be writing? You know, who am I writing for? What's my creative life about? And it can invest it with a lot more sense of significance if you claim what's already given to you, what's already trying to come through. As I said, it could be changing the world somehow. You could be a Gandhi or a Martin Luther King. I suppose you could also be a Hitler. You know,
Yeah.
that's the danger. It's in the book The Soul's Code, James Hillman. You know, the great archetypal psychologist. He has this. It's all about the daimon self. You know, he has a chapter about what he calls the bad seed. This whole theory also comes into play, and you have to account for the fact that there are very monstrous things that happen in the world, and people who seem to be monstrous. This is all fraught territory we're talking about.
As I was reading the first few chapters of the book, I thought, of course, of Taoism and Wu Wei, and then I noticed that you do mention Taoism later on in the book. But talk about Wu Wei and how it relates to what you're saying here in creativity.
Y'all may be familiar.
Well, maybe go over it again. Yeah, action, effortless action, that kind of thing. But you can probably articulate it better than I can.
Well, maybe not. Wu Wei, W-U, and then W-E-I.
Right.
It's a Chinese term associated with Taoism, and it's the most common English translation is effortless action. And in the book, I suggest that a different way of rendering that the great religion scholar Houston Smith came up with might be preferable, and that's creative quietude. But the idea is that, you know, Taoism, we have the symbol of the Tai Chi disc, right? The yin and the yang. And that's heaven and earth, male and female, active and passive, light and dark. The idea is that these principles are what makes everything be what it is. And the idea in Taoism is to flow with the Tao, with the totality, you know, resting when rest is right, acting when acting is right, and be completely in harmony with what wants to happen. That's what Taoism is all about. And the principle of Wu Wei in Taoism is, when it says effortless action in that translation, it means tuning into the point where you realize that you're not efforting to do things. You're not trying to make your life happen. You're not trying to take right action. You're not trying to make yourself or anyone else do anything. You reach a point where you're just sailing along, and even if anything seems to happen through the agency of you, it's just happening the same way I talked about earlier on that walk to the store, where you might have tried to project what was going to happen, but you couldn't imagine that car was going to pull up to that corner at that moment. You know, that's reality. It just happens. You didn't ask for it. It's just there. So Wu Wei is that quality of effortless action, or as Smith called it, creative quietude, where you learn to rest in the moment and just see what's coming up. And you can do this now. I mean, you can, you know, get meditative for a moment and go, what noises are happening in the room that I'm not paying attention to, even if it's just the settling of the house. It's there. You don't feel like you're making it happen, but you also don't feel like you're making your hair grow or your metabolism do what it's doing right now. But you call that you, don't you? This conscious ego self, where we feel like we're severed from that and have separate autonomous control, that is just a hallucination. We are enculturated and entrained into a hallucinatory sense of self by our culture. Most cultures have done that. Every culture has a sense of self they put together. It's sort of post Enlightenment, rational, modern Western society that created the modern egoic, you know, rational, self-interested, separate self. But there's been versions of that throughout history. It's fine that it happens. It's something that happened. It's something that's happening.
Right.
But in fact, you and I, in this sense of self-control or self-possession, are just flowing, just like your blood is flowing right now. As I said, at some point, this experience started happening. When the conception that was you happened, at some point it became something that was conscious and then became self-aware, you know, after toddlerhood. And it's the same thing happening right now that was always happening. It just looks different.
I think that,
and you tune into it.
I think everyone's, you know, knows the cliche going with the flow. And maybe it's cliches are cliches for a reason. But that's, to me, that's what you get into in this book, in life and in creativity. I don't want to keep you too much longer because we got Bad Hand Books here and
Yeah.
on Taff, but just a few more things if it's okay with those guys. I think, well, let me put it to you this way. Um, I was trying to kind of summarize this for myself, and I don't know if I did a good job or not, but as far as when it comes to creativity, and again, we can use the example of writing. I wrote down a step one would be surrender conscious control. And I wrote some things after it. Number two, trust the demon, muse, the inner genius. Three, collaborate from the present moment. Am I on target, off target? What if this really seems to appeal to, if this really is for those listening,
Mhm.
you can see yourself in this. You get
Mhm.
into it in the book, but what do? You sit down, you listen. I mean, go from there. What for someone who's not used to this? You know what I
Sure.
mean?
I think you're on the right. You're on the what you wrote down there. That's a great uh, abstracted, condensed points for it. You could also go with what Bradbury said when he said in one of his essays in Zen and the Art of Writing that he had a sign that he'd kept above his writing desk for years, and it was a reminder for him to look up. And it said there were three things on it. It said, number one, relax. Number two, don't think. Number three, have fun. That was it. So the point is trying to get out of our own way, right?
Yeah.
And you talked about going with the flow. That's great. That's a great easy condensation of Wu Wei, which gets into a cosmic sense of it. If all of this sounds like it speaks to you, there are various things you can do. One of the easiest ones is if you really feel like you want to write, you can go at it from a couple of different directions. Sit down, blank sheet of paper or blank open document on whatever device you use, and just invite whatever happens to happen. Some people find it useful to do it in the morning, and some people find it useful to give themselves a sort of rules for free writing. Like some of the best ones are like uh, pick. I'm going to write 500 words, or I'm going to write 3 pages, or whatever, and I'm just going to write. And it doesn't matter if I even feel like I know where I'm going with it. I'm just going to write, you know, and whatever comes out comes out. Uh, Even if it's repeatedly saying, gee, I have no idea why I want to write. Why don't I have any idea why I want to write? That can be interesting. That's a very good exercise. You're just trying to find some way of getting out of your own way. Do what Bradbury said. Don't think. Pulverize your forebrain, you know? Uh,
Or
the
on
morning writing thing is helpful.
Bukowski's tomb, headstone, don't try.
Don't try. Yeah, that's where you see this comes up again and again and again. You can also do things like there's some very, very valuable advice in various places, and some of it. I think I get into this in my book, plus the previous one, of course, in demonic creativity. Some people are really drawn to the stuff we've been talking about finding out what it is that they are uniquely geared toward and inclined to write. Like, what's your native theme? You know, there's a great book, by the way, titled "Lessons from a Lifetime in Writing." That was its original title, "Lessons from a Lifetime in Writing." Told you I'm tired. You can all say it.
No, no, me too.
Who is the author? Who is the author? Who is the author who wrote the original novel of First Blood?
David someone, I can't remember the last name. I don't know. If only there was some way we could look this up.
Yeah, it's insane that I can't say. If only we had some kind of device that would allow us to look up this information. I know him quite well. I mean, I don't know him, but anyway, he has a whole chapter in that book on getting started by ways to divine, do some exercises with yourself to figure out. You feel like you want to write,
Morel.
you're going to do your best if
Thanks,
you're in
Scott.
the zone. Do what now?
One of the people in my side chat, Scott, said Morel. Is that his
I
last
can't
name?
believe I couldn't say that. Thank you,
Yeah.
David Morrell. Brilliant, by the way. His novels and everything. He's on fire. He's brilliant, and he has great advice in that book. Used to be called Lessons from a Lifetime in Writing. I think maybe it's called A Successful Novelist now. But there are things you can do, whether his advice or not. If you're more inclined to, instead of sitting down and starting writing something, think about, get some good guidance on just self-reflection. Like, what do I feel like writing? Who am I? I have some exercises on that in the previous book, of course, in demonic creativity, which is still free on the internet. And that really gets some people a lot of mileage where if they have a sense, oh yeah, wow, somebody has led me through think, oh, I want to write this kind of thing. You might know
Okay.
you want to write fantasy or horror or whatever, but we all know the signature themes that our favorite writers are writing about. Well, they are people who have really honed in on who they are
Right.
uniquely,
Yeah,
what
you really
their
get that
gift
into that
is.
in the book as well. Yeah.
You can do that yourself, and that's really a good way to that can lead to quite the flow state, because a whole lot of energy and excitement are released when you are able to say to yourself, oh my gosh, this is what I want to write about. So there are a couple of different avenues into this.
Well, in closing, guys, I found myself nodding so much when I was reading this book, and as you said, it did speak to me creatively. I think it'll speak to a lot of people. I hope that I've asked the right questions to pique people's interest in the book, because it's a worthwhile investment.
Thank you.
And I think, Alan, did you have a few questions too, or one or two before we?
I just had one question. I mean, I had one question I thought of, and it wasn't in the book, but I felt like somewhere in there was probably a good explanation on why so many artists turn to self-destructive impulses. Is that
Yeah, you're
you've
right.
thought about? Or?
There's a little bit of that in the previous book on demonic creativity, and it's not so much about why they turn that way. I do mention that the demon, Daemon, as your muse spirit, can become demonic. Just take out the A and become a demon. That's interesting. There are the cases of people who would have become really disturbed and bad if they weren't artists, like Terrence Stamp, the actor Terrence Stamp. I
Oh
vividly
yeah.
remember one time reading him, as it was in my adolescence, reading him saying, and he was saying it satirically, but I think only half so, that if he hadn't become an actor, he would have become a mass murderer. That's a real phenomenon, right? On the other hand, there are people who are self-destructive with their writing, and I do deal with that. I think there's a chapter. There's only one chapter in the new book, Writing at the Wellspring, where I kind of get really into what almost be like a question and answer format, kind of like, well, what about this? What about that when it comes to the demon muse? And a couple of things I talk about in there are the question of, this kind of seems dark and scary and so on. And part of my point, speaking of us being in the middle point as egos earlier,
Right.
is that's one of the jobs of the ego, is to midwife these things in an intelligent way. There's one aspect of the demon that is just a volcanic force of nature, and it does not care about your and my individual welfare, nor anyone else's. So, there are things that can come up that you got to go, no, don't think so. Some of the evil geniuses in history have been led by a genius, but it has been something that was a little too volcanic. It had a bad direction to go, and it was incumbent on them to be somebody that would take responsibility for it. Destructiveness toward them and others resulted when they did not. Something to be aware of. And I think ultimately, if you pursue this also with a view to sort of becoming who you ultimately are, and sort of the whole spiritual unfolding aspect, hopefully there's a course correction that naturally comes in when you realize, I'm really destroying myself along with other people if I assent to these darker, wilder things in a bad way.
The last question is from the audience. Scott wanted to know about what are your degrees? What do you have?
I have a PhD and people always ask about this. I have a PhD in leadership. And they're like, how can you have a PhD in leadership? Leadership studies goes back as far as, at least as far as Plato's Republic, where he's plotting out the hypothetical ideal society, maybe somewhat ironically, and talking about who would lead it. It's a major field. It's become huge in the modern, like the past 80 years too, with organizational studies and institutional leadership. So I have a PhD in leadership or leadership studies, organizational and other. And I have a master's degree, Master of Arts in Religious Studies, with two emphases. I had a track in Biblical Studies and a track at what my university called Religion, Self, and Society. I have a BA in Communication with an emphasis in radio and TV production. I was originally a videographer, and a minor in philosophy. So that's my academic package. I taught college English composition and literature for years and years, and also world religion classes.
That's incredible, impressive.
Thank you.
Matt, this is Doug Murano. I also studied leadership. Just wondering if you ever came across Gilbert or Matt Fairholm's work in servant
Say that.
leadership.
Who was the first one?
Gilbert Fairholm and his son Matt did a lot of work in servant leadership, and I studied under Matt Fairholm. And so I was just curious if there was any connection there, because
I bet at some point I have to, I'm sure I did, like servant leadership, as originally articulated by Robert Greenleaf. And yes, I've read Greenleaf and others. And in fact, servant leadership played a part in the analysis I did with my dissertation. I'm not sure that I read those two, but chances are that somewhere in some source that I used, they were there. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it's just I rarely meet anyone who has really taken a deep dive into that field, so I figured I had to ask.
That's great. I'm glad you did.
Well, the title of the book is Writing at the Wellspring, Tapping the Source of Your Inner Genius by Matt Cardin. You can go on Amazon and you can pre-order the Kindle if you're a Kindle person. I'm both. I like print and Kindle, but the nice thing about Kindle is I can highlight, which I love to do. So otherwise, if you want the print edition, just wait till the 15th, which is a week from tomorrow, and buy it on Amazon. So anything else?
A week from today, I don't know if you're familiar with the podcast Weird Studies. It's rather popular.
I think I've heard the name.
I've been a guest on there a couple of times. They have an online community and learning platform called Weirdosphere. And I taught a year ago, before the book was, developed for publication. I taught from its manuscript. I taught a course for them on it. And a week from today, the day before publication, they're hosting an online launch party. And I'll be through my social media, mainly Substack notes, and then Facebook. I'll share a link to that. It's free, but you have to go through the registration link to get there. But I'll be reading the introduction to the book, and then talking about it with people.
What do people need to Google or whatever to get there in the meantime?
I have a newsletter blog that I run titled The Living Dark. And it's just you have to put the www in front of it. Don't forget, you have to do that to get there. But it's www.livingdark.net. So I'll be talking about it on there. And you can find me on Substack if you look up my name. If you just look up my name, like Google it or whatever, you'll probably find my presence with that blog. And I will be sharing that information either tonight or tomorrow with the link to the online launch party.
All right, cool. Well, I might have to ask you to come back on soon, because we didn't even get into living into the dark. Your phrase in that book and everything's got into a lot, but we didn't get there yet. So anyway,
well, I'd be glad to come back.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. You're welcome. I'm going to talk with Doug Murano and John Taff. You're welcome to stay the whole time, or if you got things to do, you're welcome to drop out. So
I will stick around for a bit at least.
All right, awesome. You're in charge of the questions.
All right.
Nice to meet you guys in person. Sorry, what? Nice to meet you guys
now, so I can handle
the. Nice to meet you guys in person, more or less.
Yes.
Likewise.
Yeah. Can you guys both introduce yourself? Doug, the last couple of years, you started Bad Hand Books, and you've really taken off. It's really been impressive to watch.
Thank you. Yeah. So my name is Doug Murano. I'm the founder and CEO of Bad Hand Books. We're an independent horror, crime, and dark fantasy publishing company located in South Dakota, which is about as unlikely a place as one can do it from. But we've had some great luck. Previous to that, I was sort of a hired gun for a number of small presses. Did some anthologies with Crystal Lake Publishing, included Gutted, Beautiful Horror Stories, and Behold, Oddities, Curiosities, and Undefinable Wonders. Have worked with the likes of Clive Barker and Ramsey Campbell and Josh Mallerman, Gabino Iglesias, a lot of folks who are doing really interesting work now. And then in 2022, I kind of got tired of working for other people. So I set up my own shingle with Bad Hand Books. And I kind of laughed because, Matt was talking about, the flow state. And I feel like I might be the yang to that, or because, my entire philosophy is sort of rooted in the raging against the dying of the light. Our sort of catchphrase with bad hand books is you can do a lot with a bad hand, and it is rooted in sort of the beginnings of the business. I came up with the idea of bad hand books after I'd been laid off in 2018 from a corporate communications gig, and I started saying that to myself. I was the sole breadwinner for my family at the time. We had 4 kids under 6 years old, and
Wow.
I think the wheels kind of came off a little bit. I had some dark nights of the soul, and
Yeah, that's panic time, all right.
Mhm.
it was a rough time. But for whatever reason, I started saying, well, you can do a lot with a bad hand, and at that time it was sort of self-deprecating. You know, I'd say it to myself, and I'd be like, yeah, you.
Yeah.
And it was rooted in a helpless feeling. But I would use it to sort of taunt myself. Um, and then I realized that uh there were a lot of bad hands in horror, from Hellboy's Right Hand of Doom to Ash's hand in The Evil Dead to the Monkey's Paw. And I was like, okay, there might be something brand-ish in here, because my career had been in marketing and branding at that point. And so when I made that connection, I sort of made myself a promise at the same time. I said, all right, if I ever get out of this, if I ever get to a point where I can start my own business, I'm going to call it Bad Hand Books, and try to turn this, you know, dumpster fire into a middle finger that I ride out under. And that's kind of how we roll.
Yeah. What was Laird's book the very first one that you published?
Actually, no. It was a book called The Hideous Book of Hidden Horrors, which was an anthology of short fiction. And I sort of started in my wheelhouse with Bad Hand Books, where um, to that point I'd been mostly involved in anthologies, so I thought kicking things off with an anthology would make
Yeah.
sense.
I
And
love the
then we had,
title.
I'm sorry.
I love the title.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was another one of those things where I sort of felt like I was painting myself into a corner, because I woke up with the title in my mind and I thought, well, I thought the title was kind of silly at the time, but I was like, all right, we're going to call the book that, and just like dare people to not like it.
You're basically illustrating a lot of what Matt has been talking about so far in your
Okay,
life.
okay, good, good, yeah. Um, and then we had Eric LaRocca's They Were Here Before Us, which we called a novella in pieces. It's more or less a connected set of short stories, but it's very thematically linked. And so there is precedent to non-plotted novellas that are thematically linked vignettes. Some of my favorites have been in that mold. And so we called it a novella in pieces. And then we had Sarah Reed's Root Rot, which was also a collection. And then a novel from Sarah called The Atropine Tree, which is kind of gothic period piece. And then we got to Michael Wehunt, and then Laird Barron. So Not a Speck of Light was, I think, the fifth book that we had. Sorry for the entire catalog, but I
No,
had to
it's
kind of
great.
think through it myself.
I just linked to your catalog on your website on the in the side chat
Oh, thank
for
you. Yeah.
folks.
But
Um,
I will say that well, we also did a novella with Laird, The Wind Began to Howl,
right.
with Isaiah Coleridge. But I will say that Laird was one of the very first conversations that I had when I came up with
Would you
this
not?
idea, and really when I incorporated, that's a big
That's a
cat.
cat butt.
That
um,
is Rufus. He is
He
a
wants
bear.
to be on camera, Mark.
but I had worked with Laird a couple of times with short stories and anthologies, and I knew that Laird was one of those folks I wanted to work with more in depth down the line. And I don't know if I can just keep going, Mike. Is that okay? I can
Yeah,
talk about the
sure.
backstory there. Um, I had read the Isaiah Coleridge trilogy the Christmas before Hidden Horrors came out, and I'd mostly been involved, in reading and publishing more of his cosmic and antiquity stuff. And so the Coleridge trilogy really fascinated me, because it was almost straight up crime noir in the first volume, and then it just kept getting weirder
Right.
and weirder. And I thought, when I finished it up, I thought to myself, well, this is awesome. I really love where this is going, and I would love to see more. But it didn't look like there was going to be more from that publisher. And then it occurred to me, I'm like, well, I'm a publisher. And so I got some time on Laird's calendar, and my suspicions were correct that there was, he wanted to do more with the character. Um, and we talked really broadly about what we wanted to do, what he had in mind. I talked to him about sort of what sort of energy I was hoping that we could explore with that. He was completely on board, and from there, the relationship that was founded in Coleridge really led to Not a Speck of Light, and the joy that we got from working together.
Well, I don't want to speak for Laird, but as a friend, I can tell you that he was very pleased with how everything went. You did a really great job for him. So
Thank you. Yeah, it was my pleasure, and honestly, I'm very much a dance with the ones who brought you kind of guy.
yeah,
Laird was one of the first established authors who really took a chance on Bad Hand, particularly with Coleridge, and so I feel a great deal of loyalty to him, and consider him a friend at this point. And I actually can break some news here on the
oh, all
podcast.
right,
We are. I alluded to this during in a social media post, but I can get a little bit more into it. We are including an original story in the limited edition of Not a Speck of Light, the limited hardcover. And we are a little bit behind schedule on that, but for those who have been following Laird's journey, he's had some challenges in terms of health, significant challenges.
yeah.
But all the while, he has been plugging away at this original story that's going to be exclusive to the Not a Speck of Light limited hardcover. That actually came in yesterday, and it's a 6,000 word antiquity story. I'm not going to give away the title yet, but we've got the illustration from Trevor Henderson, and I
Yeah.
think folks are going to be really pleased with it.
When roughly do you see that hardcover coming out?
That's a good question. The original vision was to have it come out sometime in November of this year.
Mhm.
Given the realities of production, so just going to be completely transparent, between getting the tip-in sheets signed by Trevor and Laird, and then probably, I don't know, 4 to 6 weeks in terms of printing and production. I mean, we're probably looking at January, maybe early February of next year. But we're really we're incredibly close in terms of where we need to be. I've got all the stuff. We just need to get it into production.
I've always felt that it's better to get it done right than to get it
Yeah.
done fast. The people
Yep.
will forget when it came out, but if it's not the way it should be, that's there forever.
Yeah, yeah, and that's really why I tried to give this as much room as humanly possible. I knew that, Laird was really up against it, in terms of health. And I just told him repeatedly, I said, you get better and do what you need to do first and foremost. And then whenever you can squeeze work in on this, that's fine.
Yeah.
Would check in with him or Jessica every couple of weeks just to see how things were going. But my attitude is, I want this to be something that Laird can really be proud to stand by, and something that's great for his readers too. So,
Yeah, they're
yeah,
gonna be really excited about that.
it's going to be beautiful. The new art, where there's all new art for every story from Trevor Henderson, who did the art for the original volume, and then story notes for every story. It's going to be limited to 500. They're going to be signed and numbered. We're really trying to do something special with this volume, because we weren't able to come out of the gate with a nice hardcover, which I think in hindsight kind of sold the collection short a bit. So I was really pleased to be able to come back around and do a nice hardcover.
Well, no, I don't think you have anything to feel bad or whatever, however you're feeling about it. I think the whole thing was a huge, huge success.
I
So,
appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah,
and
I was so pleased for him.
yeah, me too. And you've got another special project coming. But before we get to that, if it's all right, let's talk to John real quick about his new book. So, John Taff, good to meet you in person.
Nice to meet you finally. Yeah.
More or less. I posted a link to your book today on the Big Easy Facebook page.
Okay, thank you.
It's called All the Stars Die, Cosmic Horror Novellas by John F.D. Taff. So this looks great. I haven't had a chance. Doug sent me the a digital arc a few weeks ago, and it completely fell through the cracks in my brain.
Well, I
But
hope you get to read it, and I hope you
I'm looking
enjoy
forward
it.
to reading it. Yeah.
It's sort of my apologia to all the people that I've told that I don't like Lovecraft. Because I've spent years of my life denying that I have any love or any appreciation whatsoever for Lovecraft. But then I
So,
found after, I've been doing this for 35 years off and
yeah.
on with, more or less success. And I found myself, especially in the recent years, kind of slanting more and more toward cosmic horror in my short work. And then I have a apocalyptic novel called The Fearing that was basically my big testament to, the impassive, unemotional universe that we all live in.
Yeah.
So I've been flirting at the edges of cosmic horror for quite a while, so I finally decided to dive in and write a couple of. I've got 6 novellas in this novel. 5 of them are new. One of them is a reprint from a couple years ago that didn't get wide distribution. So I'm excited to have it out there. I hope people enjoy it. I think they will. I I've actually known Doug for 10 years now. Doug
Sounds right.
approached me at a world horror Stoker Con. I think it was the last mix of its kind. What was that, 2014 or 2015? I don't remember.
2014.
And he was looking for stories for Gutted.
Hmm.
And so he approached me about putting a story into Gutted, and it's blossomed into this beautiful relationship between publisher and writer. I've kind of followed him around. I think I've had stories in maybe 90% of the books that he's edited. And when he went to form Bad Hands, Doug had already established himself as somebody in my life whom I trusted with my work, who was a good editor. I saw how much effort and energy put into packaging stuff, making sure that it all looked right, and read right, and got out there to as many eyes as you possibly get it to. And what more could you ask for in a small press
Yeah.
publisher or any publisher for that matter? Because I've had my swing at the big press, and it's not as good as people would hope it would be.
Yeah,
So,
agreed.
so I've really enjoyed it, and so I've kind of followed Doug. Doug's been gracious enough to pull me along with him. Um, he also republished my first novella collection, which was done in 2015. It was called The End and All Beginnings, which I got my first Stoker nod for. So he reprinted that back in, was that September, October?
September.
That's the fourth time that's been in print.
Well, geez, I was looking at, I typed in your name in Goodreads, and I was like, holy
Yeah,
crap, how many books
I've been
has
doing
this
this
guy
for a long
written?
time.
Yeah, I think I can age John a little bit because I published you in Death Realm back
I
in
totally
the
remembered. I
Wow.
was going to
early,
bring
what
that
was that,
up.
early 90s, probably.
It was called The Dark Level. It was about a
Yes,
parking garage.
and I have not looked at parking garages the same way ever since.
I got a lot of great feedback on that, and
I it's been so long I don't remember many details about the story, but I
uh,
remember
well,
loving
I
it quite a
remember that the
bit.
Well, where
presentation
can
that
I
you gave
find
us
that?
was
Because my
really
wife is
nice.
scared to death of, where can I find that? Because my wife is scared to death of parking garages.
As far as I know, Death Room was the only. Well, no, I collected it in
Little black spots, right?
Little Black Spots, I think,
Yeah.
Little black spots.
which
Okay.
may or may not, Doug, maybe be looking at reprinting that too. So
Was that the only one of your tales that I published? I can't
I
remember because
think
there
it
were
was. I think so.
many issues and
It was
many
a long time
authors.
ago.
Yeah, I think that was what, 93 or something.
Yeah, we're dating both. We're
Well,
dating
why
each
did
other.
you
I'm not
did you
old.
keep turning
You're
him
old.
down?
I'm
Is that
not.
what's, why was
But
that the only one? Did you keep turning him downward?
I I don't know.
I don't know. I turned down everybody.
I was
Almost
submitting a
everybody.
lot during that period, trying to build my name up. So I think
Well, I hope you
between now and
reprint
then, I've
this.
sold like 125 stories.
I hope you reprint Little Black Spots because I just looked it up on Amazon. It's out of print. So
Yeah, all my stuff. My stuff had been carried by a company called Gray Matter Press,
mm,
who again was a company that I trusted. The guy did a really good job. Now I got a cat bothering me. Um,
a lot of
and he
us
decided to get out of
do.
printing, publishing.
Mm.
So I found all my stuff kind of orphaned, and Doug was aware of that. So he acquired the End and All Beginnings and this new book first, and then he just acquired The Fearing, and we got some big plans for that. And then we're talking about some of the other books in my back catalog to bring back.
Well,
Little Black Spots being one of them.
yeah, good, good. I'll be buying that. For the audience, if you're interested in cosmic horror, and I gotta assume you are if you're listening to this
I would
podcast,
think.
yeah, All the Stars Die, cosmic horror novellas. As John said, there's 6 of them there. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading it. It came out what in October, something like that.
Came out in October, yeah.
Okay. Also,
6.
you win the best background of the episode.
I'm in my geek man cave where my wife makes me keep all my geeky stuff.
Do I see Superman in his black suit?
I got all sorts of action figures and books and Star Trek ships and Captain America shields and everything you can possibly imagine. And my
Looks
wife is like,
great.
I don't care what you get, just keep it in that office.
Yeah, that's kind of what my wife says about my stuff. All right, last but not least, Doug, you've got a really
Hey, there you go.
yeah, Godzilla. You've got a really fun, interesting project coming up. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, thank you. So early this year, author Ben Percy, who is a novelist, short story writer, essayist, also works extensively in Marvel Comics, emailed me kind of out of the blue. He'd been an author that I'd wanted to work with for quite some time, and it was just, you want to take a big swing. And that was like the first line of the email. And that big swing turned out to be the end times, which sort of elevator speech for that is it's a post-apocalyptic novel. Hey, there it is.
Yeah.
Told in a series of newspaper issues. So the basic conceit of this is that it's 12 years after the world ends. So it's not the world ending. That's not the story. It's the world trying to begin again. And Mary Poole, who made it through this pandemic that wiped out 99% of the population, finds a printing press 12 years into this. And she's she considers herself a failed writer. Is in a survivor enclave in North End, Minnesota, and decides that this is the way that she can contribute to society. And the first issue is just Mary Poole. It's all her, but this thing is going to grow over the course of the 12 monthly issues.
Yeah, I really loved her opinion piece, and this comic that's included with the first news just really hits the nail right on the head, you know?
Thanks. Yeah, Matt Bowers produces all of the art. So he did the masthead, and there's a comic in each issue that sort of goes back to some of that nostalgia from the world before, and
right
that the post-apocalyptic world can.
She says in her opinion piece that we were all spoiled back then and didn't know it. Words to that effect.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a meditation on civilization. It's going to be a meditation on the power of journalism and the necessity of having folks who come to that in good faith, and the devious power of misinformation in our lives. So there's going to be some interesting twists and turns when it comes to the narrative here. And then the sort of unexpected crazy thing that happened was a few months into this. So we were well on our way to be planning this. My mother-in-law happens to own a weekly newspaper in Wabae, South Dakota called the Wabae Clipper. And so when I decided to take this on, I immediately called Linda Walters, who's my mother-in-law, and said, "Can you help me out with this?" She's laying it all out. We're printing it in Ortonville, Minnesota, in the little newspaper office that she gets her papers printed. And so let's just say 4 months in on a Monday, Ben Percy emails me, and it's something to the effect of, "I don't want you to get too excited, but I emailed Stephen King and I asked him if he would want to contribute to the end times."
Yeah,
and,
why would you get excited?
Exactly. Well, it's like I don't know. It felt like pitching a coin into a wishing well.
Right.
It just felt like I probably better forget about this. And I just decided immediately I was going to put it out of my mind because there's always so much to do. But let's say that was a Monday. Wednesday, Ben emailed me back and he goes, "Good news, Steve's on board. By the way, here's his first article." And oh, by the way, Fangoria is going to break the news tomorrow. And so that changed my world in a hurry, and it was
Oh
awesome. But as a PR guy, I felt like I'd completely lost control of the story. So it was at that point that we hired our own PR person, and we've been able to sort of corral that story. But I think just like pick an author, and they're going to say, "Well, Stephen King was the first horror novel that I ever read when I was way too young." Well, I'm one of those people. So people like me who idolize him are a dime a dozen, but then to go back and be able to actually work and publish, original stuff from King is it just doesn't quite feel real yet. And then to
See,
add
Alan,
that
thank you.
to he's bringing the Bachman pen name back in an interesting way. This has been discussed in a couple of different news outlets, but Claudia Bachman, Richard Bachman's ex-wife, is the byline that Stephen King is writing under. So Bachman is back with a little bit of a twist, and she talks about her marriage to Richard and his writing career. And so for those folks who really get into like the King lore and geek out over that, there's a lot to be had there as well. And just I don't want to spoil anything, but the Claudia has an interesting arc in this story. So I think I better leave it at that.
When will issue 1 be out?
Actually dropped the 19th of November.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah. And so we've left subscriptions open. Folks can go to badhandbooks.com, and it's still under pre-orders, because I didn't want to move things around and break links all over the place. But so the folks who order by, what is it today, the 7th? If they order by the 10th, they're going to get issues 1 and 2 simultaneously. And we're going to ship with hopes of hitting mailboxes the 19th of every month, because 19 is kind of a geeky Stephen King number that shows up everywhere. The digital version comes out the 19th.
Okay. Yeah, I thought I saw it under pre-orders, which is where I was coming from, thinking that it wasn't out yet, I guess.
Yeah. It was one of those things that I struggled with about whether or not to move this, but the link is showing up so many different spots that I didn't want to break it at that point. But we're trying to, so the digital orders are going to be open throughout the duration of the project, because each new emailing that comes out is going to include an archive of everything that came before, so you can get caught up no matter when you subscribe. Print pre-orders or print orders, it's a little bit trickier, because then you're starting to deal with multiple lists that you got to send to the printer about who gets what and when. And so I'm hoping to be able to leave it open at least a few more weeks, just because, it feels like as much promo as we put into it, people are just starting to hear about it. And so we've got a nice drumbeat of subscriptions, but
it won't be, you won't be able to subscribe forever, basically.
Weeks,
so people have to get in on it.
I was gonna close it down. So this is the original vision for it. Originally, we were just going to do 500 and done. Like, it was going to be a solo Ben Percy project. It was going to be one of those weird things. We were going to sell 500 subscriptions and then just say, hey, that was fun. But and those sold out almost immediately. And then you compound that with King's readership, and there was just a lot of demand. And so
a good problem to have.
Oh, yeah. No complaints here, but it presented logistical challenges. But the Ortonville Independent was kind enough to be able to, they said that they would, label and ship everything directly from their facility, which was a game changer for us. And so now, if it came to it, we could sell 100,000 subscriptions and they'd be able to print it, ship it, which is great. Because just a one-man band over here will not be able to label, and I have no automation here at all. But yeah, it's hugely fun. And at the end, we're going to collect all 12 issues into an omnibus. We're going to relay it out into some sort of oversized book-shaped thing, and that is going to be available for purchase as like a book-shaped thing at the end.
Okay, that's great too. But if people want, what would you say, the first edition of this?
Yeah,
they need to get to badhandbooks.com and sign up, right?
Yeah, that's right. And we are, just really just days away from our second issue mailing. And basically what'll happen is around the 10th or on the 10th, I'm going to send the mailing list as it is to the Ortonville Independent, and they are probably going to print it by, I would say, the 15th at the latest, and then it's going to go straight out into the mail. We've had some reports, just because it's the holiday season, of the mail dragging a little bit. So I mean,
that'll definitely happen
yeah,
this time.
the first issue hit from right away on the 19th, to some are still getting there. And I'm told by professionals in the USPS that that'll cool off in January. So.
There are professionals in the Postal Service?
Yeah, there are. They're
Wow.
really helpful, and I'm gonna only say super nice things about them because I depend on them.
Well, this has been a long episode, but a really enjoyable one. Thanks for being here, guys. Doug, I really think a lot. I really admire what you've done with Bad Hand Books. You're doing a really, really great job. So
Thank you. I appreciate that. Hey,
there it is.
yeah, Matt's got that for our prize today.
Yeah,
actually.
this is
I
the
gave
prize
away
this
my
week.
last copy.
Okay.
So if you want to win a copy of All the Stars Die, send an email to easyandprizes@gmail.com. Put stars in the subject line. It takes us 6 to 8 weeks to draw a winner. You got plenty of time. If you don't enter, you got no chance. But who knows? Our drawings are random. It might be you. It's even got this.
Nice.
Hey, the signed bookplate version. Great.
Yeah,
there you go.
And if I can kind of just expound just a very short bit about what's really interesting about this book, is something that John alluded to earlier. Is it's a talented writer coming to grips with what he loves about Lovecraft in a lot of ways, and also it's a conversation with the stuff that isn't quite so great either. There are confrontations of racism in these pages. There's a lot of humanity brought onto the scaffolding that Lovecraft brought. And I know that a lot of the criticism of Lovecraft is that he's kind of cold and distant in his prose. That's not John. And so you're going to get a lot of heart and soul in that cosmic horror context, which, mix that in with a writer grappling with Lovecraft and his place in the genre, just makes a really interesting soup.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and
I'm going to buy that one, and I won't reject it this time.
I'll even sign it for you, Mark.
There we go. I love it.
well, that too is available on Kindle and in print.
Mhm.
If you're a Prime member, you'll get it pretty quickly. And good to meet you, John. Good
Nice to meet you too, Mike. I really appreciate your time tonight.
Oh, no problem at all. Good to meet you, Doug.
Likewise.
Matt, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. And again, Matt's book is Writing at the Wellspring, Tapping the Source of Your Inner Genius, and it comes out next week. So thanks,
you.
everybody. If you want John's book, enter the giveaway. So
Enter.
thanks, guys. Really appreciate it, and I hope you have a wonderful night.